Okay, everybody, we are living in historic times. In some ways, I would say these are the most historic days of my life, and I'm sure Eunice as well, you would say the same. You're no doubt quite a few years younger than I am. Um, I'm thrilled today to be joined by someone who can give us not just general insight into what's happening between Iran and Israel, but someone who actually understands Iran at a cultural level. We're joined by Younes Sadaghiani, whom I actually know personally, have known for a while, a great man who lives in the UK but was born in Iran. He has family in Iran, and he knows what's happening in a more direct way about what's happening on the ground right now. And so it's so important that we can gain insight from people like Younes, who can also reflect on the dramatic, historic days that we have been witness to, and perhaps to speculate and talk about the actions that are needed to determine what happens next. Younes, first of all, thank you so much for making the time to join us on this JTV Live. Do you want to start just before we get into what's happening in Iran right now? And as I say, this is a live, so you have the chance to pose your questions directly to Younes if you want to in the comment section. But before we get into the specifics of the war, can you tell us a little bit about just your own background and your own story and how, and your, being in Iran, why you left, and your own connection to what's happening today?
Sure. So thanks, Ollie, for having me on JTV channel. So me and Ollie used to work together on Reason, another channel. So that's how we know each other. We probably know each other for a year now. And basically, it's actually a very long story. And I don't think I've actually told this story before publicly, but I will tell it now. My dad went to boarding school in this country, and so did my great granddad. And from my dad's side, I'm actually connected to the Qajar dynasty, which is the dynasty before Reza Shah Pahlavi. So my great great granddad used to be the king of Iran.
Wow.
So after the revolution happens, is because of my roots by how we were connected to the royal family in the past, the Islamic Republic never really liked my father. And
Mm.
basically what happened was my dad used to work for the British embassy in Iran, and they basically, when they stormed the embassy in Iran, they arrested my dad, they threw him in jail, they seized all
Wow.
his assets,
Wow.
and basically he was in jail. So me and my mom had to escape to come to this country, and that's why I don't have a dual citizenship, and that's why I can't go back to Iran, because as soon as I go back, they will probably kill me. So my dad had to, give up all his assets, come out of prison, and then he escaped, and then he went to Istanbul. So the Islamic Republic has personally stolen millions from my father. So there's no love lost there. But other than that, it's just the fact that Iran could have been one of the most beautiful, most powerful, one of the richest countries in the world. We've got great culture, great language, we've got four seasons, we've got everything. And, we've got a historic friendship with Israel. Iran is the second state that recognized Israel in the world. And also, if you look back at it historically, 2,500 years ago with Cyrus the Great, the first ever Bill of Human Rights that was signed by Cyrus the Great to, basically make a friendship with the Israelis and the Persians. So the Jews and the Persians actually have had a very long standing friendship of 2,500 years. So what I want to say to the world is that the Islamic Republic do not represent Iranians. These people staged the coup in 1979. They took over my country. They have been stealing for the last 46 years. They have been killing Iranians for the last 46 years. And they've basically taken the population hostage. And that's why I support Israel in these strikes. It's not like I'm going against my country. These people are not Iranian. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with the Iranian people to free us from the oppressive Islamic regime.
Absolutely. And I've always wondered this. Is it
Yeah.
wishful thinking to think that most Iranians oppose the regime, or do you have concrete evidence that that is indeed the case?
I think I have concrete evidence because, first of all, we had like 15 to 20 million Iranians immigrate from Iran. People vote with their feet and legs. If they leave your country, you're probably not doing something right. A.
Yeah.
B, the other side of the equation is that a lot of the Iranians that are stuck in Iran probably don't have the means to immigrate, because obviously the dollar is 100,000 tomans now. So the currency, Iranian currency, has collapsed. So basically, people don't even have money to be able to escape. So I just feel for the Iranian people, but also you can see it in the protests. You can see it in the protest of Mahsa Amini. You can see it in the dozens of other protests that have happened in the last 46 years. People are unhappy. But then the difference is we don't have freedom of speech. We don't have freedom of expression. You go in the street, you protest something, you get shot in the head. It's not like the United Kingdom. So obviously, when you're in that situation, a lot of people are risk averse, and they're still very brave. Don't get me wrong. Like if we had a situation like this in the UK, people wouldn't dare come out. But the fact that people would dare come out and still dare to protest, it just shows you how brave they are. But unfortunately, we're a dictatorship. Uh, the regime like shuts down the internet. They shut down the flow of information. But I am confident that I would say 80% of Iranians are
Wow.
against the Islamic Republic. I
Wow.
would
Wow.
say
Wow.
about maybe 10 to 20% are for them. And that minority is shrinking by the day.
Wow.
Even the Islamic, even the people that are, wear the hijab and they're very Muslim, devout Muslims, over time, people have lost faith in this regime. And I just think it's the 1% controlling the 99%. And that 1% probably has influenced over 9 to 20%. But I would say confidently 80% of Iranians are against the Islamic Republic.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And what do you say to our leaders in the West, bar President Trump? And Western leftists, I saw people like David Lammy and Emily Thornberry here in the UK who say, well, we don't like Iran, but Israel is escalating this. Israel is being provocative as well. There's bad actions on both sides. What is your message to people that are saying we need to de-escalate?
Well, first of all, they don't know what they're talking about because there's no negotiating with terrorists. We've tried negotiating with the Islamic Republic before, and they've broken every single agreement they had. And if a country is threatening to build nuclear bombs, and they keep saying we're gonna use that first nuclear bomb, I'm gonna drop it in Israel, we're gonna wipe out Israel. If someone keeps saying that, I use this analogy of like saying you give someone a knife, and then that person keeps threatening to stab someone with that knife. Everyone around you will like, okay, put that knife down. You're not allowed to have a knife. If that person keeps saying, I'm gonna stab and I'm gonna kill that guy sitting across the table from me. So there is no negotiating with the Islamic Republic because it's rotten from the core. You cannot have a religious theocracy in the 21st century. And you can take that lesson from Saudi Arabia. Look how much they improved in the last 6 or 7 years after Mohammed bin Salman came. And look at the reforms he introduced. And we're very close to signing the Abraham Accords. We just need a complete and change of mentality. Something similar that's happened in Saudi Arabia. But ironically, like Iranians are not even Muslim. Like historically, there's Zoroastrian. They're not even like Islam was something that was imposed on us. And these are Shia Muslims. They're not Sunnis,
Yeah.
which is, I would say it's an even more extreme version of Sunnism. And I just think Iran can do so much better because I think majority of Iranians are open-minded people. We have one of the great cultures of the world, one of the oldest civilizations in the world. They call us
Also
the cradle of
geographically as well,
civilization.
by the way,
Yeah,
Iran's situated at such an important place between where the east and the west meet, basically.
exactly. It was that whole corridor. They call it the Silk Road, where
Yeah.
basically in the past they used to have import and export from Europe to China. They had to go through Iran. And as I said, we have four seasons in Iran. We have a sea in the north, we have a sea in the south, we have islands, we have mountains, we have skiing, we have four seasons, like proper seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. We have snow. We've got everything. We've got great
Mm.
culture. We've got great people. Like if Dubai can do what they've done,
Mm.
I always say Iran could have been Dubai times 1,000.
Yeah.
And it's just such a
Yeah.
shame what's happened to my country because if you go back to the 1970s, you look at the videos, Tehran was one of the most visited cities in the world. After Paris, it was the second most visited city in the world, just
Yeah.
like what Dubai is now. So in the 70s, Tehran used to be the Dubai of the 70s. And unfortunately, in 1979, we had a revolution and everything changed.
Yeah. So for people to understand this clearly, there are some who say, and I've seen people on the telly saying this, and I'm shocked to hear them say this. They say, "Well, Iran says death to America and death to Israel, But whether they mean it or whether it's just kind of posturing, it's another question. Just to be, can you be clear to us when they say they want to have Armageddon, when they want to destroy Israel and they want to destroy America? Do they mean it? And do they mean it even if it potentially means their own destruction?
Yes, I do think they mean it because this, I mean, if they didn't mean it, they wouldn't keep saying it. A. B, they've already tried on multiple different occasions through Hamas, through Hezbollah, through Houthis. All these rockets that are being launched towards Israel, they come from the Islamic Republic. And if it wasn't for the Iron Dome, and if it wasn't for the Jordanians, and if it wasn't for the Saudis, and if it wasn't for the Americans, Israel would have been destroyed by now. So it's not for the lack of trying. They've already tried, but they just
Mm.
failed.
Yeah.
That's one point. The second point is that I'm going to go back to your earlier question. We have virtue signaling politicians that don't know what they're talking about. And there is a massive distinction between Arabs and Persians. Because I understand certain people saying, well, if we interfere in Iran, we're going to have a situation like in Syria or in Iraq or in Afghanistan. Iran is not the same because those countries, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, they're very Islamic countries. And it's in the case of Iraq and Syria, they're Arabs. Whereas Iran is completely different. Like people in Iran are very open-minded. You
Mm.
go to America, like majority of, people in LA are Persian originally. And we're just not the same. Majority of Iranians do not want a religious theocracy. So I
Mm.
think I'm not in favor of a full-scale war at all. I don't want a single Persian civilian dying. I don't want America and Britain and France to go and invade Iran. But what we're doing right now is the correct move. Take out heads of IRGC, take out strategic bases, take out nuclear sites, take out other significant, strategic terrains, and let the people do the rest of the job. I think fundamentally what we need now, we need encouragement for Iranian people to rise up and for the whole international community saying, we are behind you, we will help you to get this revolution and over and done with. You know why I know this? Because majority of IRGC leaders are dead. Khamenei is hiding in a bunker now like a rat. And the rest are fleeing the country, actually. There are
Mm.
reports
Yeah.
of many senior leaders or their wives and their children, fleeing to countries in South America. So they're already running away. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to topple this government.
Yeah. Yeah. And with what began the military operation Rising Lion on Friday, June 13th, what do you make of what's happened over the past few days and your assessment of the progress Israel has made thus far?
Well, I think they've made good progress. Again, I know Netanyahu is like Marmite. A lot of people love him and a lot of people hate him. I happen to be one of those people that actually respect him a lot because if it wasn't for him, then we would be in this perpetual war with Islamic extremism. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing and he's willing to take the flak for it. That's a real
Yeah.
leader. No
Yeah.
matter what the world says about him, they call him a, Nazi and a Zionist and causing genocide. He doesn't care. He knows what's happening, so he's willing to go ahead with the plan. And if Iran is freed, we have Netanyahu to thank for. Because even Trump, because I don't really think Trump understands that you can't make a deal with the Islamic Republic.
Mm.
I know that Trump is really risk averse and he doesn't want to go to war because one of his campaign slogans was, I'm not going to start any new wars. But I think sometimes war is necessary. But this doesn't need to be a full scale war, as I said. It can just be an
Yeah.
aerial war where you take out strategic people and places and the rest people will take care of. But we need international support. But we also need a strong opposition and a position that I would like to be a part of, where we get a group of 50 to 100 competent people that can go and take charge of the country.
Yeah. So, well, then this kind of leads to my next question. As you said, over the past few days, we've seen Israel taking out a lot of senior leaders, both in the military and IRGC, and they've been taking out surface-to-air missiles and other such things. How close do you think Iran is to collapse, basically? You said to me just off air that it really actually depends on the people. So are you saying that it's not ultimately going to be down to what Israel does?
No, it will be down to what Israel does. But as I said, we need three different factors. The first factor is Israel and America, hopefully soon, and maybe rest of Europe, strategically taking out IRGC members, taking out military bases, taking out nuclear sites. That's the first step. The second step is that the people of Iran need to be brave and come out in the millions and protest the Islamic Republic.
Yeah.
Okay? And number three, we need a strong opposition, whether it is from within Iran or from outside. We need a team of people that can come and take power, right? And in terms of how close we are to collapse, this is the closest we've ever been, and it's probably the closest we'll ever get to. So we have to seize the opportunity, in my opinion. I don't think we will ever find ourselves in a situation where Khamenei is hiding in a bunker, majority of IRGC leaders are dead, and the others are fleeing the country. I think this is the
Yeah.
perfect opportunity, because if you stall and delay, they will have time to recoup. They will have time to build a bomb. They will have time to do all those things. So we just have to move ahead full steam.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you in touch with anyone on the ground in Iran?
Yes, so luckily, all my family from my mom's side live in London, and all my family from my father's side, they live in Istanbul. However, I do have distant family members, such as second cousins, second aunties, second uncles. And basically, one of my cousins, he's 18 years old. He's very against the Islamic Republic. However, because he's 18, he's mandatory for military. And unfortunately, he has to go to the military bases because they force you in Iran. It's mandatory 2-year military service in Iran. Against his will, he has to go to one of these military bases. And I
Wow.
actually worry for him. I worry
Yeah.
for him. And that could be the story. That could be the story for many young Iranian boys that absolutely despise this regime. But because, they have to go to the military, they have to go and fight a war they don't want to, and their life is in danger. So I think one way to protest is, if I could give a message to those boys, don't go. If nobody turns up, then what are they going to do? They're already in a war. They can't come and arrest everyone and throw everyone in prison. Because if you don't do your military service, it's like a 10-year imprisonment punishment. But I'm thinking, like, during a war, do you really need to go to the military base? But if everyone does that, hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of young boys, saying, you know what, we're not going to come. We don't really want to fight for you. And instead
Yeah.
go in the streets and protest.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the advice I would give.
Of course, it just requires them to do it en masse, and that's what's really
Yeah,
required for everyone to stand up and do
yeah.
that. It's do you have a sense what the feeling is on the ground among Iranians right now?
Yeah, I do have a sense. Some people are really happy, others are scared. And there's a mass exodus from Tehran right now. I was watching videos of it where everyone's leaving the capital because, majority of IRGC buildings are in Tehran and in major cities. So people, because they want to, move out of harm's way, they don't want to be, because there's always going to be collateral, you know. So they're
Yeah.
going to the north of Iran, or they're just basically leaving Tehran. So I think there is mass hysteria, you know.
Yeah.
So that's. But then some people are really happy it's happening. Some people are scared, and some people are against. But I think majority of people actually want this to happen. But if you were in their shoes, you'd probably be scared too,
Of
because
course.
you don't know what's going to happen. So I don't really
Of
blame them.
course. Of course.
Yeah,
Now, a video is going viral at the moment of Iran's state broadcaster broadcasting, and as they broadcast it, they come under
exactly.
the building comes under attack. Let's watch the video, and perhaps you could also translate to us afterwards what the anchor is saying before the building collapses. Have a watch.
صدای متجاوز به خاک وطن، صدای متجاوز به صدای حق و حقیقت است. آنچه که ملاحظه کردید، صدایی که شنیدید، فضای غبارآلوده استادیوم
I mean, and that's the end of the broadcast for today. And now the weather. And
So
I do
basically,
wonder.
what she's saying,
Yeah, go on, go
what
on.
she's saying, she's waving her finger like the dictator, saying, "This Israeli government, they are the rapists. They like to rape women and children and kill innocent people, and we will get the response and we will destroy them. And as she's saying, we will destroy them, they just get bombed. So it was like perfect timing.
Yeah.
So
Someone once
that's
said to
exactly what
me,
happened.
Iran
Yeah.
and Hamas, Hezbollah, it's a bit like. Did you ever see The Wizard of Oz, where the wizard seems
Yes.
all kind of scary, but actually it's this kind of little wimp behind the scenes that
Yeah.
And sometimes
But
I
this
feel
is,
like,
let me give you some context about how weak and pathetic the Islamic Republic is. It's all a bravado. Okay.
mm,
Islam, Iran is the fifth richest country in the world. Okay, there was a study done on this in terms of GDP. We've got the second highest oil reserves in the world. We've got the second highest gas reserves in the world. And I think we're third in precious metals. So in terms of natural resources, we should be in the top 5 powers in the world, right? However,
mm,
right now we rank 118th.
yeah,
And this is just a sentiment to how incompetent this regime is. We're richer than Saudi, by the way, if you add
wow,
everything together. And we've got
wow,
also a better culture, in my opinion, much more, open culture. This regime can't provide its own citizens with heating. The heating, if people, because I know people that live in Iran, for 6 hours a day, you can't turn heating on, or you don't have electricity for 6, 7 hours a day, or you don't have internet for 6, 7 hours a day. So a country that can't provide basic necessities to its civilians, such as water, electricity, gas, internet, how incompetent are they?
right,
Right?
right.
And then they pretend they can go and make a nuclear bomb and attack Israel. No, you can't, man. You can't even and they have like massive inflation. Like the price of eggs, like a person in Iran, I feel sorry for a lot of Iranians. Like people can't even buy one egg with a full day's wage. Can you imagine that? So
It's
a
insane.
country that can't provide these basic necessities, they want to go to war with America and they want to go to war with Israel. It's stupid. Or maybe they use all that money to buy military equipment. But look, they are weak. They are pathetic. It's all a bravado. It's a death cult. And that's all it is. So this is what I say to people. They are not as powerful as you think they are. They can't even do the most basic things. So what makes you think they're going to make a nuclear bomb and attack Israel?
I'm reading a report right now that Iran
Yeah.
International, the Iranian opposition channel, will air an interview with
Yeah.
Prime Minister Netanyahu featuring his message to the Iranian people. Just wondered your
Okay.
response.
Who is interviewing him? Is it Puria Zarati? Do you know?
Don't know. But it's Iran
Because Puria
International.
Zarati, yeah, I've been on Iran International before. Puria Zarati is my friend. He's interviewed Netanyahu before. I've been on his show, and I was wondering if it's him because it's going to be most likely him because he's the only one that lives in Israel. Actually, the rest
Right.
they live in Washington or the UK or something. So it might be Puria Zarati, which is my friend, which is going to be interesting. Um, yeah, I hope everything will be fine, and I also have my prayers for both Iranian people and Israeli people because at the end of the day, I heard a lot of Israelis also died, and a few families here and there. But I'm optimistic. I think these are, sometimes chaos is important. Sometimes you need to let certain things burn for you to grow a new tree.
And what are your thoughts on America getting involved? There are some people saying it's not a good idea. Other people are saying, no, we should see America get involved.
Mm. I would like America to get involved, but I think Trump is operating under this illusion that he can somehow make a deal with the Islamic Republic. Or maybe he's trying to virtue signal to his base because one of the reasons he got elected is to be anti-war and stop wars. He doesn't want to start a war because that goes against one of his campaign promises. So I think people around him are very smart. Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Steve Bannon, all these people know what's going on. I
Yeah,
think I think what he should do, he should remove himself from the nuclear negotiations, put crippling sanctions, and also help Israel. I mean, technically, they are already working with Israel. Like majority of the rockets that are intercepted are actually
sure,
intercepted by American
sure.
jets. So, but they need to push this one step further because we can't be kicking the can down the road. This is what I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Obama tried this back in 2014, didn't work.
yeah,
Carter tried this, didn't work. Reagan tried this, didn't work. Bush tried this, Clinton tried this. They all tried this. They all tried to appease the Islamic Republic at some point in their presidency. And the funny thing is, it's like a bully. The more you try to appease a bully, the bigger bully he gets. The
Yeah.
only way to deal with bullies is to stand up to them. And
Yeah.
that's just a philosophy of life. That's what I think.
Sure, sure. We've got a question from Pamela Etty. Do you think that if Israel can kill the Ayatollah, will that get the people to rise up against the regime?
Yes, 100%. I think he's one of the main sort of players. He's like the king on the chessboard. So if you take him out, the game is pretty much over. But, you know, they are quite smart in the way they set this up, because it's not just the Ayatollah that has the power. Ayatollah is the supreme power, but we have a councillors, we have an assembly of councillors, we have the IRGC, we have the army. So, and you know, the IRGC is just basically there to protect the councillors and the Ayatollah, whereas the
Right,
army is different. So IRGC is part of the army.
right,
So, and they set this up in this way because when the Shah was in power, he was the utmost power. And if you took the Shah out, you took the whole system out. So they kind
right.
of like branched out the government in different ways to make it harder to collapse, which is actually quite smart if you think about it. So
Yeah,
Ayatollah is not just Ayatollah, it's also the Assembly of Councillors, it's the IRGC, it's the army. But I think if you take out Khamenei, I would say we're 80% of the way there.
right, right. And just help
Yeah.
us understand, what kind of system would in its ideal look like. Let's say, would you want to see the return of the Pahlavi monarchy? What kind of system is that? Is that sort of like a constitutional monarchy like we have in Britain? Help us understand what an ideal Iran in your eyes would look like.
Well, to be honest with you, I would prefer a republic. I would prefer a system that's more similar to the American system, like three branches of government with a president and a legislative, like a House of Representative and a Senate, something like that, Congress. But a lot of Iranians are in favor of a monarchy, which is fine. But I think those are part of the small print, to be honest. I think the
Yeah,
most important thing we have to think about now is to overthrow this regime. I think what should happen is that Pahlavi, because he's the main sort of player, he's got his weaknesses, which I'm not going to get into, but I support him. I agree with him in many aspects, but he's the main player. And I think everyone should kind of go around him, go back to Iran, get the power, let the dust settle for maybe 1 or 2 years. And in 1 or 2 years, we can have a referendum to
right.
see whether we want a monarchy or we want a republic or a parliamentary system, whatever we want. These are some things that we can decide in 1 or 2 years' time. I just don't think we have the time to think about these things now.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think people like you and so many people in Iran understand what we Jewish people of good sense, people in Israel understand? Yet there are so many people, particularly in the West, who seem to look at Israel as the aggressor here, but not just with Iran, with Hezbollah, with Hamas. How do you explain that, and what is your message to them?
Well, basically, because we had it happen to us. This is what people don't realize. Maybe people were naive and stupid back in the 1970s. That's why they caused a revolution. And the revolution of Iran was happened by left-wing extremists and
Mm,
Islamists. And once they got into power, the Islamists killed all the left-wingers. Something that's very similar to happening now in the United Kingdom. All these virtue signaling left-wingers thinking they are, empathetic and they are on the right side of history. No, you're not on the right side of history. And I think, look, you only learn by pain in life, I think. And I think Iranian people have been through a lot of pain, and they've learned their lesson. They learned the fact that you cannot mix religion and politics. You cannot give these Islamic extremists any room in politics. And also left-wing policies don't work. So I think Iranian people learned this lesson 46 years ago till now. And they had to suffer for that decision, right? Whereas
yeah.
I think the people in the West, they haven't learned this lesson yet. And that's why one of the reasons I actually started what I do is because I could see the same mistakes people in Iran were making in the 70s, we're making now in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing that Iran right now is launching more missiles towards Israel. So again, if you're watching this from Israel, please head to your shelter urgently. Um, it looks like also Trump is, saying Iran is losing and they'd better head to the negotiating table. And there's been reports that Iran is indirectly proposing there be a ceasefire. I assume, of course, you would not welcome that and say Israel should
They're
keep
scared.
going.
If they were winning, they would never ever propose a ceasefire if they were winning.
Yeah.
There's another thing with bullies is that when they're losing, they're like, okay, let's stop. The thing is, they only want to negotiate when they're in a weak position. It's so funny, So I think it's a strategic mistake on Trump's behalf to try to make a deal now. If Iran is saying, let's make a deal, that's exactly why you shouldn't make a deal, because they know they're very close to collapsing. Their only way out is to make a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before we finish this, I just want to say there's your chance to ask your questions to Younes. If any of you have some questions, there's a huge amount of comments, but if you have questions, that would be helpful. We've got a question from Charlie, who says, please ask Younes, how do Arab countries view Iran?
Well, the thing is, I think the Persians and the Arabs, they kind of have a long-standing beef, let's say. The same way I would say the Israelis and the Jews and the Arabs and Muslims, they have a long-standing beef. It's the same with Persians. And what happened was that 1,400 years ago, Arabs conquered Persia after 1,000 years of trying. They burnt buildings, they burnt libraries, they killed women, they raped women. And it took them basically 300 years to convert Persia to Islam. Same thing that actually happened in Israel, actually. When Muhammad conquered Israel, he basically killed all the Jews, caused a massacre on all the Jews. Same sort of situation happened with Persia and Iran. But I think now with Mohammed bin Salman and these smart leaders in the UAE, and even Qatar now, because I think Qatar is starting to change its tune a little bit. I think all they care about is just money. They just want peace and prosperity. They don't want a nuclear state right next to them because, Dubai is right there. And let's not forget, Iran once threatened that said, oh, if you go to war with us, we're going to nuke Dubai. So that's not what UAE wants, do they? They've spent the last 50 years building that city. So I think the Arab countries in the region, especially I'm talking about Saudi, about Qatar, about UAE, maybe Jordan, maybe also Lebanon, they just want stability. I think the region is tired of Islamic extremism. And I think Islam is going through its own renaissance now. And I think it's kickstarted with Mohammed bin Salman. It's going through its own renaissance. I think it's becoming a much more peaceful religion. It's becoming a more accepting religion. And it's not probably because of the religion. It's just because they realize they need to evolve. If they don't evolve, they're going to be, held back.
Yeah.
So I think I salute people like Mohammed bin Salman and the leaders of UAE and these sheikhs because they are the ones that are kickstarting this catalyst for, a new age and a new dawn for the Middle East.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a question from Rev.d who says, do you think Israel and Iran will be close allies if the regime falls?
100%, because as I said, we have a friendship of 2,500 years. And also, funnily enough, all my friends are Jewish. Like majority of my friends are Jewish, even though I'm not Jewish myself. And I actually didn't know that I had a lot of Jewish friends, and until after October 8th, they were like, oh, by the way, we're Jewish. And I've been to a lot of Shabbat dinners. I would say 50% of my friendship circle are Jewish people, which is quite funny. But also what they say to me is that their close friends are also Persians. So I think Persians and Israelis, or the Jews, they get along for whatever reason. They get along. We have maybe similar cultures in some aspects.
Definitely.
And as I said, Iran was the second country in the world that recognized Israel under Reza Shah Pahlavi. The second country in the world.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It is, absolutely. It's remarkable.
If we can do it, if we can do it 70, 80 years ago, we can do it now.
Absolutely. Did you grow up always being sympathetic towards Israel?
Well, I didn't think much of it, but this is the thing. When you're born in Iran, I went to a private school in Iran, but everything's controlled by the government. So when we went to school, they taught us to hate the Jews. They taught us to chant death to Israel. They taught us to chant death to America. And
Wow.
Obviously, I never really liked the Islamic Republic, and I always knew. But obviously, they try to brainwash you. But I know, and a lot of people are sheep, and a lot of people probably would follow. Same thing that probably happens in Hamas and in Gaza, how they teach you to hate the Israelis. Same sort of situation. It takes a special type of person to kind of block that out. But I
Yeah.
think I grew more sympathetic as I got older. I got more sympathetic as I got older because I
Did
started understanding history and what's happened, and also why it's very important for Jews to have a state. When people talk about Zionism, I'm a Zionist because Zionism means that Israelis or the Jews should have a state. And the only reason Jews were prosecuted for centuries is because they didn't have a state. So they had to go from country to country. So I think it's very important for Jews to have a state, to be able to have a safe haven. Arabs
I,
have 22 states. Muslims have 50 plus. So when they talk you a colonial power and a Zionist state, I'm like, well, Muslims have 50 plus countries. What are you talking about?
yeah,
You're the
yeah.
colonial power.
And
Yeah.
not just that, by the way, but the Palestinian National Charter, produced in the 60s, said the Palestinians are an inseparable part of the Arab nation. Well, if that's the case, you've got 22 nations already. Now, one of my final questions, I'm just curious to pick up on what it was like at school in Iran when you're taught to hate Israel. Did they make a distinction between Israel and Jews?
No, not really, no. But also, if you read the Quran, it's a very anti-Semitic book. I think actually I read this somewhere, is that Quran has like 13% anti-Semitism, and Mein Kampf has only about 7%. So the
Well, the
Quran is
reason
a
I
more
ask is
yeah.
sure. The reason I ask is just because Iran likes to say, yeah, we're not against Jews, we're just against Israel and Zionism.
Yeah, but that's just their excuse. That's just the way they hide their sort of utterances
Yeah,
behind the veil of empathy and nonsense. I think, well, I give you a bit of history. Muhammad uh, conquered Israel, uh, committed genocide on the Jewish community of Khyber, killed Kanana, the leader of that group, and then slept with his wife Sophia the same night he killed her husband. And if you read the Quran, it's full of anti-Semitism. It's like it talks about how you should find Jews. If the Jews is hiding behind a stone, you should point them out and you should kill them, something like that, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. And also, there's also a lot of hadiths that are very anti-Semitic, I would say. But again, very few people take those things literally. But if you're an Islamic theocracy, then it's in your doctrine to hate the Jews.
of course.
I just think
And
majority
you
of
have a lot of
Muslims.
subject material.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I think majority of Muslims, they're good people. And my criticism of Islam is not to, try to be offensive to Muslims. I'm trying to critique Islam. But I know majority of Muslims, they pick and choose and they cherry pick. And oh, look, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We want to live in peace. We want to, have a good time, right? But also, every religion, to some extent, has even the Talmud. If you read the Talmud or the Torah, there is some dark things written in the Old Testament. So I think every religion, to some extent, has its dark parts. But then the difference is, I think the major difference with Islam is that Islam is a very militant religion, and it's also a lot of call to action in Islam. And also, Muhammad is not the greatest role model, in my opinion, because he killed thousands of people, beheaded thousands of people. You can't really say that about Moses or Jesus.
Yeah. Really, really important stuff here, Younes. We've covered a wide range of topics, and your experience and insight and background is just utterly invaluable right now for our viewers, who I know will really appreciate it. We've put a link to Younes's channel in the description and the title, so you can give him a follow there. Younes, really appreciate you coming on at the last minute to share with us your thoughts on what's happening. Godspeed, and I hope your distant family will all be okay, and that, please God, will soon see the rise of peace and wonderful relations between two great peoples.
Exactly. I hope so too. I'm very optimistic. Future is bright. Thanks for having me.
Me too. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching. See you on the next live. All the best.